Yeah. Four more in 2024. Donald John Trump, MAGA, Make America Great Again. So it started off. Now, I think everybody knows that CNN and MSNBC are shield networks for the Biden-Harris administration, for the Democrat Party in general. So for the globalists, liberal global world order, etc. For the what you would call the deep state or the military, industrial, pharmaceutical, technological, media complex. So, anyways, Joe Biden has one of the lowest polls going into a re-election in history. In the history of the United States of America, in the history of presidential elections. So, disastrous poll numbers, a weakening economy, strengthening adversaries, Bidenflation, tons and tons of problems, illegal immigration, floods, hordes of foreign illegal migrants, illegal aliens, essentially invading our great country through Biden open border policies. So the Biden-Harris administration has been a disaster, and it's a continuing disaster. Out of control energy prices, so out of touch policies with the Native American people, with the American people, American citizens in general. So add that up, and it's a disaster. No one likes Kamala Harris. Very few people in the nation like Joe Biden, unless they're like Mark Zuckerberg or there are some elites, some wealthy elites on the left. Big tech titans love him. Mark Zuckerberg, Sundar Pichai of Google Alphabet Corporation, Microsoft, NBC, Bill Gates, they love him. Obama, Clinton's, they think he's the bee's knees. But I don't think he's going to win re-election. So if he runs, a lot of people are saying he might try to tap out because he's too old. I think they're going to try to run him unless they have a surprise, unless they want to bring out Michelle Obama from Martha's Vineyard. Still, then there's no guarantee if they bring out Michelle Obama that that's going to be a guaranteed victory. Trump is leading his GOP rivals for the Republican nomination by at least 50 points in the polls. The rivals are very weak. MSNBC today tried to say, oh, people that doubt Joe Biden's re-election efforts, his chances of getting re-elected are a lot higher than people even imagine. More lies and shills for the global liberal world order. Most Americans don't believe their propagandistic lies. They're continuous, perpetual lies. A truth you only have to say a few times. A lie you have to repeat over and over again. So that's the thing with propaganda, is that lies have to be continually spoken. Truth only has to be spoken a few times. So, or once. And so that's the difference between lies and truth. Liars have to lie enough so that people have to, so they have to be indoctrinated and brainwashed into believing the mainstream media narrative. But most people know this guy has compromised our union, compromised our country, and that he's corrupted to the core. And Joe's got to go in 2024. 75 million people voted for Donald Trump in the last election of 2020. I think the Democrats only slid Joe Biden in, this old fart, this old incompetent derelict fart, because of the Chinese plague. Without the plague, Trump would have easily gotten reelected, most likely. So, heard the Democrats and the leftists in leftist cities and states across America are trying to bring back COVID mandates, but people are not having any of the lies. They're not falling for it anymore. They shall resist, and they'll resist through the legal power of democracy, through voting. And stand up for the Constitution of the United States of America, for free speech, liberties, and constitutional amendments of the United States of America. They will stand up for the law of the land, and they will defend the Constitution of the United States of America. To whatever end. And so, a nice wrestle over here. Yeah, let it out. I know you're angry Biden's president too. Letting out her frustration over there. So, I guess I was trying to think, I'm not a political scientist or anything, or a Red Eagle Politics YouTube for that matter. I do find it interesting looking at the election maps of 2016 and 2020 for reference. So we'll do that momentarily. I'm going to finish up this brew. Ice cold. The drought is continuing in Texas. We may have gotten some sprinkles last night, maybe a little rain, but it's hard to tell. Everything's so dry. So I think we didn't get much rain, if we got any at all. I just saw some sprinkles. I wouldn't count that as good precipitation. So it's been about 2 months without rain where I'm at in North Houston, Texas, in the Champions area, where all the champions live, of course. But that goes without saying. Refreshing ice cold brew, quite excellent. So we'll pour over the maps. I think the deep state, the Obamites, they were probably shocked that Donald Trump won in 2016. The establishment was shocked. The uniparty state, the Bushes, the Clintons, and all those in collusion with each other, they were shocked. But a lot of American people did not trust Hillary Clinton because of Whitewater and other scandals. And so when Donald Trump said crooked Hillary, it really stuck. And it was like, yeah, we shouldn't trust the Clintons, even though the 1990s were, pretty good years for Bill Gates, I guess. But for American people, I guess they had plenty of jobs. There was the 1992 recession, which enabled the former governor of Arkansas, William Jefferson Clinton, to dominate 2 terms in the 1990s. And so, but there was a Republican Congress, so he had to work with a Republican Congress mostly. And they were able to compromise on a lot of issues. And in fact, I think they had a balanced budget of the United States. So that's before the United States went on kind of Roman Empire escapades, like into the Middle East, forays. I mean, they were already going into escapades with Herbert Walker Bush with the first Persian Gulf War, but that was a direct response to the Saddam Hussein's invasion of Kuwait to seize their oil resources. So he might have had other territorial and political ambitions, like maybe creating a Islamic super state or defeating his Iraq's chief rival in the region. which is Iran. So, anyways, so much for history. But save for the 1992 recession, it was kind of mildish, and the economy boomed and recovered, especially with the emergence of internet technology and computers, PC. That created a whole lot of different businesses like IT, programming, networking, um, online shopping, so forth. And then eventually it would lead to like social media, and the internet was a big boom. So the Clinton years looked very, very prosperous and successful. I was a young man through that from 12 to I guess he left office, in 2000. So from 12 to 20, it was Clinton. But no one really trusted his wife, though, Hillary. So it was not really shocking when she lost. It was shocking to the Democrats. They thought, well, she was Secretary of State under President Obama, and he was popular. But the sad truth of the reality is that President Obama was probably elected because he was African American and not because he was a great president. I know that's a hard pill to swallow, but he got elected because he was black, the first one. That's it. So they were hoping, well, maybe we could get a woman elected just because she's a woman. Maybe that'll have the same kind of gravitas. But fortunately, it didn't. They picked the wrong woman to do it. They could have picked another kind of Democrat woman, right? That could somebody unknown or something. Maybe could have beaten Trump. Maybe, um, but it was not to be so. I guess they suppose that if the left wanted to be the if the Democrats wanted to be the party of uh, well, they're already the party of rich white men, aren't they? Mark Zuckerberg and Bill Gates. But they pretend to not be the party of rich white men. That's their greatest secret. They're like, oh, we're not the party of rich white men. We're the party of minorities. So then they find their candidate to run, their puppet, and be like, hey, look, it's the first Latino woman running for president. Vote for her, and you'll create the most progressive society ever. And you'll create the most utopian vision. And so that's their, sneaky trick. Now, we fall for the tricks often as American citizens because they're very slick. They're very well constructed tricks. If you're young and there's not been an African American president, um, then the Democrats say, hey, look, if you vote for American president, um, then the Democrats say, hey, look, if you vote for, the first African American president, he's going to change the world, hope and change, and all that stuff. So they get you because they manipulate people through propaganda. And of course, they weaponize race to try to trick people into voting, and they weaponize sex and sexual orientation and all that stuff because they know that's identity politics is a dirty form of politics, but it does work. Sometimes, not all the time. It should have worked in 2016, but they didn't have the right female candidate. Like the new kids on the block, they didn't have the right stuff, baby. They didn't have the right stuff, like in the Apollo program. So they didn't have the right stuff, baby. I didn't like, you know what? I didn't like New Kids on the Block because I'm not gay, but all the girls back in like fifth grade would have the new. I remember like walking into the cafeteria one day during the Persian Gulf War, and like I was like 10 years old or something. There was a Mexican girl, or Latina girl or whatever, and she was. So I was in kind of it was a white area, but then it was a lot of people from Central and South America, uh, and Mexico were coming in, and so the neighborhood was getting taken over. It was no longer the classic white neighborhood of the past. And so I saw the girl, and she had the New Kids on the Block shirt, and I was just like, "Fuck, New Kids on the Block! Oh my god!" Yeah. But girls love that shit. Boy bands and stuff, especially young and impressionable girls like that. But girls like boys, and boys like girls. Imagine that. What a world that is. So, anyways, no complaints about that particular fact. But New Kids on the Block, I was like, I will admit that song is pretty good. Right stuff for a boy band, pop boy band. It sounds good. I mean, at least to sing. If you're into good sounding music, it sounds good. I wouldn't buy a whole album of the shit. That one song is. Hey, the songwriters did good that day. Let's say, or the singer did. The singer and the songwriters did good that day. Uh, President Joe Lyon Hayden Briben Biden. So the student loan forgiveness ends from the COVID era at the beginning of October. Also, there's an emergency test that's supposed to go out to digital devices on October 4th after 2 p.m., they say. So, also, the Congress has a deadline to set forth a budget to fund the government, and that looms the Democrats and the Republicans by September 30th. So you see this big maelstrom of problems that's kind of bubbling up right in October at the beginning. This maelstrom, this storm of issues is coming to a head right at the end of September and the early October, which is kind of suspect, but it's interesting that everything is converging at this particular time point in the government affairs. Um, Kind of bizarre, but it is converging. If you can feel it, you can feel all these facts, and you can just kind of feel this general anxiety around that particular time. It's probably for a reason because you got that gut instinct, or at least some of us do. And it could be smooth, but I don't know. There's just too much converging at that one time point that kind of gets me a little bit concerned. Uh, so hopefully the Democrats and the Republicans can hammer out a budget and the government won't shut down. Hopefully um, the emergency alert day goes well on October 4th, um, and so forth. So I'm hoping that the end of September and the beginning of October is not a total bleeping disaster, as it were. But that is yet to be seen. So I guess Washington was looked on favorably under the William Jefferson Clinton in the 1990s because it seemed like the Republicans and the Democrats could work together to get legislation that'd be good for America and the American people, and they could usually find some kind of common ground. Now, this is increasingly not the case. Now, politicians use budgets and debts and crises as some sort of political capital. They use it as some sort of weapon, especially the Biden Harris administration, the Democrats. So, unfortunately, you don't have a happy meeting of powerful and wealthy folks. You have a pretty intense power struggle, which does not bode well for the ordinary average American citizenry. So you have something that is more corrupt and more dastardly, more evil than we've ever seen before in American politics, American governance. Somehow, over time, it has become a corroded, infested, corrupted swamp from which there's almost no return. they've gone beyond a point where there is no return to form. There is no, they've almost damaged the United States to the point where you can't even salvage it, it feels like sometimes. So, at least for American citizens, American people. Sometimes it feels that way. And I get that these frustrations are very real, but they're not imagined, and uh, and they will continue, unfortunately. Hopefully, not into a civil war, but uh, America must be unified and healed on a uh, united front, as we are supposed to be the United States of America, and no less than that. So, if this is not if this is not the case, then the peril just increases exponentially. So we'll look over the 2016 election. I think character flaws, public perception is the reason why Hillary Rodham Clinton, uh, former Secretary of State, was not elected president. They could pull out of their hat. They could say, "Hey, look, it's the first African American man running for president." And a lot of younger people, the 18, 20, or 18 to 30 set, fell for it because they're like, "Hey, well, they didn't think if they didn't vote for the African man that they were racist. They just thought it was cool." So, unfortunately, what young people do is they vote for what is cool, what is the shiny thing. Most of them do. Most of them think, hey, let's vote for the coolest, or let's vote for what the herd is doing. And so um, that's kind of the trap that you have to think about. A lot of people don't critically think those voting steps. They just think, well, I have the power to vote, so I'm going to vote for whoever I want. And that's fine. Because that's freedom, that's liberty, that's democracy, right? But a lot of people don't give their votes very much deep, complex analysis of the candidates or their history or biographies or anything like that. And it's not that they have limited access to information. It's just, why do that when you can just listen to the news and they'll just tell you what to think or who to vote for? So that's a lot easier. Or if your friends are telling you who to vote for, it's a lot easier to just do what other people tell you to do, because that is the most expedient way to vote, and without complex, hard-hitting journalism and analysis. You just say, you know what? There's a black woman running for president. We've never had an African American female president. That's what the Democrats are running this year. And she looks good. She sounds good. She's beautiful. She's smart. She went to all the right Ivy League schools and Harvard. And so, you know what? Let's vote for her, because even though I'm white, that'll be the coolest fucking shit since sliced bread. Well, then so people do it, especially younger people. Now, if you've been around, you've been like, hey, wait a minute, who is this woman? Hey, who is this Latina woman? Who is this Indian woman? Who are they really? And so, but there will be a certain contingent of society that will just say, hey, this has never been done before, so let's do it. Because it's like, oh, it's really progressive, it's really cool. And all the young people say, yeah, it's new, it's cool, let's do it. And then, so what happens then, you end up in a situation where you're like, oh, shit. And then you get a tyrant on your hands. Yeah, they might be, their father or mother might came from a foreign, they might have come from a foreign country, but then you end up with a tyrant, a leftist communist tyrant, and then you're like, oh, shit, it's already too late. So that's a problem. So I think it's better to, I guess, as they say, voting matters. And yeah, maybe people 18 to 30, some of us are too easily swayed by liars in the mainstream fake news. And so what we do is, and now they might even try to make us feel like shit if we don't vote for the Latina, right? They're going to be like, well, if you don't vote for the Hispanic lady, then you're a racist white supremacist or some shit like that. So now they add the guilt factor. Back in the day, it wasn't so much the guilt factor. They tried to sell you the novelty. Now they want you to feel like a Ku Klux Klan member or some shit. They want you to feel like a Nazi or call you a Nazi, which is not true. Nazi, not true. Then they wanted to put a gaslighting guilt trip on you if you don't vote for the woman or something. Oh, you're anti-woman if you don't vote for women. Now, I'm sure there's a lot of wonderful women, intelligent, that can be leaders of the United States of America. We haven't found the right one yet. One day there will be an amazing woman that will come forth, and she will be the one, right? Just like your loved one, she's the one, he's the one. There will come forth a female. Uh, there will become there will be a Taylor Swift of politician that will come along that will be so uh, amazing that everyone will vote for her. That day has not come yet, but there will be a day where there will be. But if they put forth substandard, crappy candidates like Kamala Harris or Hillary Rodham Clinton, you're not going to get females to break the glass ceiling of the executive branch of government until you find that one that's gonna do it all. And so until then, not gonna happen. Not out of sexism, not out of racism, but out of something called logic and practicality. So not identity, but not identity politics, but reasoning. Americans don't like to be fooled twice. So yeah, everybody went haywire over Obama in 2008. Was it a great presidency? No. He was half African. That's why people voted for him. That's it. It wasn't that he was great. It wasn't that there was hope and change that was going to lead into a better 21st century future. That's not what it was. The guy was partially African. He had a different skin tone than most of the Caucasian, European, Anglo-Saxon uh, presidents. So that was the thrill of it, and nothing more, nothing less. That's it. That's all it was. Flirtation. It was probably a backlash against George Bush as well, and the Bushes and the establishment. People, I guess, they thought they were voting for the anti-establishment, but they weren't, because uh, Barack Hussein Obama was a Clintonian. He was a senator from Illinois or somewhere, and from a blue state of Hawaii. You weren't voting for anything new. Nobody knew that they weren't voting for anything new. You're voting for Clinton, but worse, and somebody who doesn't compromise, and somebody who tries to destroy America. You're voting for a communist. That's who you're voting for if you vote for Obama and Biden. You vote for communism. You vote for the Chinese Communist Party. You vote for corruption. You vote for them, that's what you're voting for. And that's what you deserve to get if you do vote for them. But you have the freedom to vote. Every American citizen has the freedom to vote for whoever the hell blazes they want. But as the old teacher used to say, voting has consequences, because that's a choice, that's a decision, and decisions have consequences for the country, other people, our countrymen. and for the world as well. So I know a lot of people probably just think it's lightly, take it for granted. I can vote. So I'm going to vote for the Green Party. And I'm going to vote for Ross Perot and Ralph Nader. And it seems very fun at the time. You have the perfect ability to vote for no rules, Joseph Lieberman or something. It's kind of funny, like Joe Lieberman trying to come back after all those years of just being in a black hole of public. It would be sort of like Ralph Nader coming back. It really would be. It would be like a flashback, kind of a strange one. I think Chris Christie is also kind of a echo flashback of the past. It's kind of like John McCain coming back from the grave. It's just kind of strange. It's like, weren't you guys relevant like 20 years ago? You guys are still alive? It's kind of like a thing where, sometimes people get old and they're like, is John still around? It's like, is Bob still living? People start out and you're like, yeah, Philip is still alive. You're like, wow. There was an old neighbor that we used to have, Philip, and I know another friend of the family came over, Ron, one day, just checking up on us after the plague, after the 2020, and so he just wanted to catch up on things and get the news, and we were like, hey, we had Phil, he visited before the pandemic, and then Ronnie's like, Phil, that guy's still alive. It's kind of like Chris Christie and Ralph Nader and Joseph Lieberman. You're like, these guys are still alive. It's kind of like surprising to some because they haven't been relevant in God knows 10, 20 years or so. So I'm going to refill my beverage and we're going to go over the electoral maps of 2016 and 2020. All certifiable, uh, logistical, factual data we can pour over. So we can't really predict the 2024 election that is forthcoming, especially with political persecution by the left and the Bidens and the Obamites and the Democrat Party. But we can reasonably assume, under normal circumstances, that Trump will clinch the GOP nomination and he'll handily defeat Joe Biden in a head-to-head matchup, if that is indeed the matchup. They could try to run American Psycho Gavin Newsom, a slick used car salesman with the slick back 1980s Gordon Gekko type hair. Or they could try Michelle O to try to do something really slick, try to get the black female into the presidency. One that actually could be maybe popular in certain circles. So we'll see what's going to happen. But whatever is going to happen, of course, before November 2024, that's going to happen the next 6 months to a year. And, well, less than 6 months and a year. And so about a year and 2 months is everything, about a year and a month. It's when everything's going to go down. So we're obviously going to see if we live what's going to go down, but it'll be fascinating to see what that is. I think everybody's kind of curious, like what's going to happen because the election of 2020 was so wild. It's interesting to see the election of 2024 if it's going to be a more mellow, straightforward election, or if it's going to be a wild as hell election. So I think some people are kind of putting on their seatbelts, getting ready for that, obviously. And of course, geopolitically, it's very rife with danger. as China and Russia have nuclear weapons. Um, the Chinese are going for 1,000 thermonuclear weapons by the year 2030. Um, Russia has about 2,000, but a lot of the nuclear warheads could be antiquated from the Cold War. So I recently saw an interview where Trump is saying we have the most baddest nuclear weapons. We have the most. So maybe he's saying that the United States has like the best nuclear weapons, and so that they could easily topple the foes, Russia and China, perhaps even in concert if it was necessary in a World War III type global conflict. However, um, some of the statistics say that the United States has, even as if they have the most advanced nuclear and intercontinental ballistic missiles, they may have only, uh, it's a good amount, 1,800 to 1,900 of them. So we'll see what actually happens, but it's quite a precarious situation on the on the knife's edge. The United States finds itself in, and NATO and the Western Alliance. So we'll see how that all shakes down in this decade, but it could be a very deadly and dangerous game and a very volatile period that we're about to enter. Probably not really. Most Americans of my generation, from millennials, are used to prosperous, kind of happy, bullshit kind of eras, except for September 11, 2001, and the terror wars. There hasn't, in the economic recession, there really hasn't been anything hardcore that Americans have had to deal with in a while. World War III would definitely be a massive wake up call from my generation that spent most of its time surfing the web and having fun. So, unfortunately, it would be a massive wake up call. I hope it doesn't come to World War III, but that definitely could be into play in the next few years.